I love what I teach because it is relevant to the world. Hi, welcome to Mr. Parker Meets. I'm Stuart Parker. Hi, welcome back to another episode of Mr. Parker Meets. I'm Stuart Parker, Orange County Public Schools 2021 Teacher of the Year. And I'm here today and I'm talking with Sally Shah. She is a 5th grade teacher at Maxey Elementary School here in Orange County. And I am really excited to have this conversation with Sally. She and I we first met and interacted with each other during our district's induction program, Great Beginnings, where we both facilitate. And I was really excited to be able to include her in these conversations because she's part of a really awesome program that we have here in the district. So Sally, thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, and congratulations again. That is so exciting.
Well, thank you. So I like to ask, because I think everybody has a different journey, how we get into the classroom. And I just think it's interesting to share that with the people out there, educators and non-educators alike, to say how we get here. So how did you get into teaching? What drew you to teaching and all that? So tell me about that.
Yeah, so this is actually my 9th year of teaching already. But what really drew me to teaching is, as a kid, I struggled in school. I always struggled. And, there was always those teachers, that would take you under their wing and see more in you than, you see in yourself. And actually, one of the biggest influences as far as teachers go was my martial art instructor. I did martial arts for 13 years. And, as a girl, I was like one of the only girls in the class. And he just took me under his wing. And, I learned just leadership and confidence. And as a young girl, going through middle school and stuff, that's something that's always a challenge, when you're going through that. And so that experience, I ended up teaching in martial arts. And from there, I was hooked. And so I knew that that's what I wanted to do. I also come from a family of teachers. My grandma was a kindergarten teacher for 30 years. And so for a while, I was like, I'm not going to do what everyone else is doing. But it was my calling. I felt that calling. And so, 9 years ago, when I walked into my first classroom, I knew that this is what I'm meant to do.
Awesome. I love that. It's so interesting how so many people I talk to, the first thing when they think about it, they go back to a specific teacher or a specific experience that they had with a teacher. So I love that. And so many of us, I too come from a family of teachers. So it just kind of gets in us. And I think a lot of it is that the service that we see and the fulfillment that our parents had in the classroom. I think we see that, and we see a difference. We see education in a different way. So that's really cool. Yeah. So in your classroom and in your all that stuff, you have a philosophy. What's your philosophy? Like, what do you look at when you're creating your lessons and when you're setting up your classroom and then you're interacting with your students? What is your kind of your educational philosophy that you get to center yourself around every day?
Yeah. So and it's interesting because I feel like I went back to that, like, oh, what is my philosophy, especially this year during these, you never know what the next day is going to bring type of thing. And, I've always focused on relationships first, everything else second. And so relationships for me is what I feel sets the tone in my classroom. So I always try to make sure that I have some sort of interaction with each one of the kids throughout the day. So definitely relationships first, everything else second. And I also truly believe in the kids experiencing learning more than just like, hey, sit down, read this passage, answer these questions. I want them to just be able to feel like they are interacting with what they are learning. Because if kids feel like they have a connection and they are involved in what they're learning, then they are going to fall in love with the learning process. And essentially, that's what we want to do as teachers, right? We want to instill in them to become lifelong learners. I always tell them like, yes, we have FSA. Yes, we have all these things. And I want you to do well on that. But I also want you to love the learning process and just that whole idea of it's okay to make mistakes. In fact, I want you to make mistakes so you can learn how to pick yourself back up and keep moving forward. So that I feel like essentially is what my philosophy is just the relationship aspect. Once you have that, then get those kids to experience what they're learning so that they are like, oh man, what else can I learn about this topic?
That's awesome. And you do a lot with the social emotional look at your students and that relationships in there and like affirmations and things like that. How do you include those things in your classroom?
Yes, that is one of my favorite things to do in my classroom is every morning the students walk in and there's a quote on the board and I will have them write the quote and then they write down what it means to them. And the thing I always tell them, I'm like, there's no right or wrong because that quote could mean something different to you as it means to you. And really what I try to instill in them is the whole aspect of journaling. There's sometimes, and we all know this as educators, that our kids are going through things we can't even imagine. They might show up to school with smiles on their faces, but they are struggling with something internally. And sometimes those kids will be like, Miss Shaw, is it okay if I don't write my quote reflection, but I just kind of like brain dump what's going on? I'm dealing with some things. I'm like, yes, absolutely. And this year specifically, I had a student come to me in the morning and was upset. And she was like, I need my journal. And she just grabbed her journal and just brain dumped everything. And sometimes I say, hey, if you guys want me to read those, put it on my back table and I will respond to you. And if you don't want me to do that, then I won't even look at it. This is between you and your journal, kind of separating the whole, like, you will get a grade when you're done. It's more or less like, I want you to use this as part of one of your tools in your toolbox to help you just cope with life, whether it's a happy thing or a sad thing. And what I've started to notice just over the years that I started doing this is the kids will go to that journal as almost like their safety, as like, this is something that I can write this down and there is no judgment. It's just brain dump. And I've learned so much about my kids, even like the ones that you would think they have the best lives ever. I have learned so much about them through those journals. And then writing back really quick a note means it gives such interaction that it establishes a relationship because you know how crazy the days go. Sometimes you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even get a chance. But having that journal entry and just having them open that journal up and seeing that note from the day before from me, it just has built such a good community in the classroom.
That's awesome. And I love that you provide that even at the fifth grade level. Some people are like, oh, what's this? And so you're providing them these opportunities to learn how to kind of handle their emotions and work through them, but they also have a safe place and a safe person in there. I think that's really important. And I think sometimes we don't think that at elementary school, kids need that at the same level, like, oh, we understand the teenage angst and stuff like that. Yeah. So, we providing that, but that's a good skill. And I love that you're instilling that in them early so that by the time, maybe they get into their high school years, they can rely back on that and be like, oh, I remember this, and those types of things. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and it's really helped them just be able to learn how to regulate themselves, because that's something that kids need to be taught, and now that the social emotional learning stuff is starting to come into an importance, like just to be that underlining thing that really holds the kids is being able to like self-regulate yourself and whatever. It's just this simple little tool that is starting to teach them those skills.
That's great. I love that. So one thing that you're a part of is a video program that Orange County has started. And this is how you're beginning, why you were recommended to me. because of your involvement in this. And like I said before we started recording, I know nothing about this. So I'm super excited when I saw what it was and I saw like kind of just a little bit of the previews of it. I was like, oh, I'm going to be really excited to learn about this. So like, is it the Early Childhood Video Program or something? I think that's the name.
Yeah, so it's through, so OCPS teamed up with UCF and they created this like PBS channel. And so originally back in, wow, I feel like this was like 7 years in one. I forget when they, so it was around like May of last year. And they
Which really is
contacted
like
me.
3 years ago, right? Like,
Which is like 3 years ago. Yes,
yeah.
thank you for that. And they contacted me and they were like, hey, would you like to, do some videos? And I'm like, all right, I can film something on my phone real quick. I had very little knowledge of editing or sound effects or really even the kindergarten to second grade curriculum, because I've always been an intermediate third through fifth teacher. But I was like, all right, sure, I'll do it. I've always been someone who like, all right, you know what, if it's outside my comfort zone, I'm gonna do it. I live outside of that. Yeah. And so we had our meeting about it, and it was basically the whole, with the school year ending so weird last year, they were worried about just that, not just the summer slide, but like that COVID slide, especially for the babies, in primary. So they wanted to do something where, these these kindergarten first and second graders would have support because they were sending home summer packets for these kids. But they wanted a teacher to kind of go along with that. So when they would do their packets, they would have a little video to watch as they were doing their packets. So I did first grade videos. And I remember, sitting down trying to think like, okay, what am I going to do with this? They were just like, okay, here's some standards and go, be creative. And I'm like, okay, let's do this. And let me tell you, it was the hardest project I have ever done because I was starting from ground zero as far as my knowledge level goes with technology. I would say I'm a little tech savvy, but I definitely have miles to go as far as my tech skills. And so, there's a group of us and we just started kind of throwing together these videos, and it ended up turning into this thing where I'm like, oh my gosh, I love this. I was like watching YouTube videos on different editing things and trying to figure out how to double myself to teach doubles in addition. And, it turned into this really cool program. And so they decided to continue this during the school year. So there's a team of us who are making now they have pre-K, so pre-K, kindergarten, first and second grade videos to support the standards. So it's been a really cool, I'm excited to be a part of that process because we went from like, what is this program going to look like to, okay, now it's going into classrooms and it's supporting the teachers too.
So like parents and teachers of Orange County, how do they have access to this? Like what can I do as a parent of an elementary school teacher, of a student? How can I access this?
So there are 3 different ways. So one of the ways is through Canvas. So it's actually, I believe they started putting it in through the CRMs. And so you can access it through there. So it is through Canvas. It's also on YouTube. I feel like that's like the easiest place to send people. If they go to the curriculum and instruction channel on YouTube, they can find it through there. And it's also on PBS. And I'm forgetting the channel, but there is a channel.
24.5?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so it's on there as well. And I think it's like kind of in a loop, and they're starting now to do social and emotional learning videos, which awesome. I'm very excited about. This is something that's new. That's just starting to roll out. So there's a group of us doing those. And I think now that social and emotional learning is becoming more prevalent and a necessity, it'll help, I think, teachers to be able to be like, oh, here's a video that teaches kids how to show gratitude, or here's a video to show kids how to, have empathy towards others. And it's just a really cool way. And it's brought to teachers by teachers, which I think is a really cool thing that Orange County Public Schools is doing.
I absolutely think WUCF is a huge treasure in Central Florida. I think it's such a great PBS channel, and I love its connection with the community. And it really stepped up with this, a lot of stuff during the spring fourth quarter. So I just want to say thanks. We love PBS in my house. My kids love all of the shows. Like, they've grown up on all of them. And so my oldest now has gotten into Nova and the stuff. So he loves watching those. So I think I love the partnership. And one thing that I love about our district, and I've highlighted it in multiple things that I didn't even think, is how our district works so well with and pulls in community groups like UCF and WUCF and Valencia and Universal Studios, all these groups, to enhance the learning of our students. And so I think that's pretty awesome. And that's amazing that you get to be in there. What's it like seeing yourself on TV? What's that like?
It's so funny because it's forced me to be very creative. When this whole thing started, I'm like, well, obviously I need to paint my wall a chalkboard. And so and it was funny because I'm like, this is why I wanted to be a teacher in the first place, so I could write on a chalkboard. And so it's forced me to, and even the other people involved in these videos just force us to really think outside the box. I think I'm always on Amazon, like, okay, I think I'm gonna need to be a firefighter in this video, and I think I'm gonna need to be a safari person or a scientist, and it's forced me to kind of think, okay, how could we make this learning come alive? And it's funny because I remember as a kid, what helped me grasp different things was I grew up on Bill Nye. I grew up on the Blues Clues and the Miss Frizzle and all that stuff. So I was like, how can we bring back like the oldies but goodies? And so I tried to like throw that in there. So it is weird seeing myself on there because, I know there was so much learning that went into that. And there would be times where I would upload a video and I would lose like half of it. And I'm like, no, what happened? So, like all of the blood, sweat, and tears that went into some of these videos. But it is weird seeing myself on there, but it's cool that I'm able to bring that creative side to kids, and hopefully they, once again, like, experience and see math is more than just like, oh, this is something I do on a worksheet, and see like, oh, well, if I was on a safari and I found all these frogs, I would need to be able to count them and add some things together, and just making it come to life. And I love that I'm able to, and I'm honored to be able to do that for these kids.
That's so cool. I think that's a great program, and I'm definitely going to go check it out. So thank you for being a part of that. And you're so energetic and so exciting. So I can only imagine how that translates into it. And there are days when I talk to elementary teachers that I'm like, they get to have so much fun. And so we try to do some stuff in high school, but sometimes you get lost in there. But oh my gosh, those sound awesome. So besides the video program, a couple of things. Maybe what are some things that you do in your classroom to get that engagement level high and that learning going with them? So what are a couple of your favorite kind of learning experiences that your students have that you want to share with us?
So I am a big fan of classroom transformations. I love to be able to turn my classroom into whatever we're learning about. So recently I did a race. I turned my classroom into like a NASCAR theme because we had the writing FSA coming up, and it was just like all of a sudden these kids were like, oh, another writing prompt. They're like, quick, we only have 20 more minutes before we have to move to the next checkpoint. And it turned, and all of a sudden I'm like, wait a minute, you did not want to write yesterday, and now they're working together writing, and it turned, once again, almost disguising the learning process into, hey guys, this is like a real life thing that you can actually do. And so it's so saying, I literally had I just threw some glow lights up and I had this space costume that's in one of the videos that I just did. And I just had this space costume on, and the kids were doing an essay about astronauts going to space. And all of a sudden it was just fun because we were all we were in space. I had music going, and a lot of those I'm inspired by so many of the other teachers in OCPS that are doing these things. And that's why I love just the social media aspect of, our district and what's going on, because you can just pull so many different ideas. But so I'd say transforming my classroom is like one of my favorite things. And I haven't been able to do that as much this year. But the few times that we've been able to do it, it's been a lot of fun. And then I also love to incorporate music and movement into the classroom too, just with like motivational chants and, songs to get them moving. Because anything that, kind of targets different learning styles for the kids too, just changes the whole environment.
Yeah. That's so cool. Just immersing whatever them into the lesson and kind of getting that feel for it, and just that change. I do some escape rooms or breakout or treasure hunts or challenges, things like that. It just adds that level of next level up, and they want to do it. So it's not even like, we're doing another review activity or whatever. This is like, oh, you got to go. And are you gonna, you gonna be able to get to the end before the pirates catch you, or are you gonna be able to do something like that? And I still do stuff like that in my high school classes, and they love it. They and I had a pirate treasure hunt a couple of weeks ago, and I dressed up like a pirate. But all week, every time I would send a remind text to them or something on Canvas, I'd always have a little pirate flag and a skull and cross. And they're like, "What's up with the pirate flag? Like, what is this?" I'm like, "I don't know." And so one girl finally was like, "Mr. Parker, did your phone get hacked?" And I'm like, "Yeah, because the hackers are gonna send you reminds about your homework."
I saw on Twitter when you did that, and I was so excited because you don't really see that in high school as much. So I was like, yes, I bet the kids had so much fun.
Oh yeah, when they walked in and I had the Pirates of the Caribbean music playing, and I had pirate flag over the door, so they walked into that, and they had a treasure box. It was so much fun, and they had a blast. So I love those transformations, and I love when because those are the things that the kids will remember. They'll remember that. When they took that writing test, they'll probably remember more about the process because they can relate it back to that race. Like, okay, so the first lap was this, and then the second lap was this, and how are we, however you had it set up, but something like that. And they'll remember that, how to do it. So you've connected the process to something outside of it that they can make that connection to those non-linguistic representations and all of those things that are good for learning. That's awesome. I love it. And anything else that you'd like to share? Because I just feel like we've only hit the surface of kind of your classroom and what it's like. And is there anything else that you would like to share or advice to new teachers? Because that's something that we both work with, and I know we both really love doing it and working with new teachers. So what are some things that people maybe who are getting into education, who are just about to graduate, or they're ready, or their first year here, what's a piece of advice you can give them?
Well, you know what was interesting is this year, taught me a lot about how important it is to take care of yourself as an educator. And because if you don't take time to take care of yourself, you're going to burn out. And I know that was one of the things that, in talking with a lot of new teachers and even just veteran teachers like us, especially when you feel like you have to learn everything, especially in the beginning, you were like, I need to learn every technological platform. And then I'm like, wait, I'm learning Nearpod still, and so I think one of the biggest pieces of advice I would give teachers is, take it one day at a time and give yourself grace. I'm very good at telling people that. And I don't really, I'm working on taking that advice myself.
Right. Yeah.
Give yourself grace. If something doesn't work out, it's okay. If, sometimes I've done classroom transformations and it has not gone well. Okay. And you're just like, oh, okay, well, this looked better on paper, but that's okay. We're going to just, all right, guys, let's go back to the basics, and, so just giving yourself grace and just really getting to know. That was one of the things I realized this year is getting to know the kids, some and knowing when to set aside, like, okay, we got to get through this standard and this standard, knowing when to kind of set that aside and be like, wait a minute, you okay? What's going on with you today? And really showing that empathy towards our students and to those,
Right.
to the other teachers around us. That is
Yeah.
just, it's so important. And I had to learn that this year. When to, you know what? I need to take a step back for a second and, take care of myself because, we can't take care of our kids or our classrooms or do those creative things if we're totally burned out.
That's a really good point.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that teachers aren't, like you said, we're not the best at, because we always want to try and do and move and whatever. But I think that's great. And reflecting on your lessons, and I like what you said. Like sometimes you're like, that wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be. But then sometimes it works super great for one group of kids 1 year, and then the next year it's not, because every year it's a different group. And so you may be like, well, this group isn't gonna do that, so we're gonna have to figure out something else for them. I think that's great. Good,
Yeah.
good advice. And self-care is so important. Um,
Yes.
yeah, because I think that's something that's really important from this whole pandemic time period, is that we realize we could push ourselves and keep working, but we just need to stop and
Mm-hmm.
do something non-educational,
Yes.
which kind of segues to the last question I
Yeah.
love asking, because in the pandemic, we all started binge watching or listening to or reading things that we'd never done before.
Yeah.
I've said multiple times on here, my wife and I, we watched all the Marvel movies in chronological
Yes.
order from Captain America to Endgame, and fell in love with all the characters and cried and laughed and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But so what's something that you've read or you've listened to or you've watched that you could share with us, and give us some opinion, new things to kind of go and look at.
Yeah. Well, I'm in the master's program right now through UCF for Ed Leadership, the OCPS cohort. So I feel like all I read are those things.
Yeah, you're like,
um, so I'm constantly, but then I also try to find like a non-educator's point of view on things. And so right now, and I also I downloaded Audible, and
okay,
that is amazing because, it sometimes with teachers we're like, oh, we always tell kids to read, but we don't have time to read ourselves.
yeah,
So I've been on Audible and I'm right now listening to Dare to Lead by Brene Brown. I am a big Brene Brown fan. And so I'm listening to her book, Dare to Lead. And it's just a really good way to kind of fill your cup, and just being able to, just on the drive, just listening to her words. And even currently, as we're going through just all of these changes. As we know, everything changes day to day. Her whole thing was about just daring and being brave. Because I feel like as teachers, every day we show up, we're being brave and we're daring. We're walking into this huge unknown. And so that I would totally suggest that to anybody, is just reading that book, picking it up, or listening to that on Audible. And it was funny this morning. She was saying this quote. She was like, daring is. I even wrote it down. I was like, daring is saying, I know I will eventually fail, and I'm still all in. And I feel like that, I'm like, man, that needs to like be painted on the walls of schools because, it's just so important to know that when you're entering something new, or for kids, when you're learning something new, you're going to fail at some point. But if you're all in, you're totally going to be able to learn from that.
Right.
So mine's still kind of educational. But as far as the whole self-care thing too, I recently um, picked up this app called Fit On, and it's like a workout app. That that right there, game changer for teachers, because there are all sorts of different workouts on there that are like 10 minutes. You can do a quick 10-minute, you can do a quick 5-minute. Because as the pandemic was kind of starting, I'm like, well, I guess I have time to work out. And so that was something that I really kind of tried to set some workout goals in that perspective. And so doing that and using that app has been super, super helpful
Awesome.
too.
That's
Yeah.
great. So I've shared multiple times that I have like multiple books that I pick up and put
Oh,
down
yeah.
and all that stuff. So one that I just went back to because of some of the stuff we're talking about in class. It's by Catherine Boo, and it's called Behind the Beautiful Forevers. And I had to get the subtitle. And they're
Yeah.
Life, Death, and Hope in a Mumbai Undercity. And so we talk in my class about slums and what it's like there and the improvement. And they go, so this is about those that undercity, the slum dwelling or the squatter settlements, however they look at it in different places, specifically in Mumbai. And so it's so interesting to see, and it's written like a story, but it's not. It still has some nonfiction in there, so it's a really interesting look into the life of kind of slum dwellings in Mumbai and just how where they are in their proximity to the wealthy people and all that. So I really have enjoyed getting back into that because of some of the stuff we're talking about in class. So I was like, oh, I need to pick that back up so I can read it again. So I'd gotten through the first part, so I get through the second part now. But yeah, it was recommended by a lot of different geography teachers.
Okay.
So I love that. And then I'm still reading a lot of kids books right now. I got like Permaid something or other, and I don't know, it's my first grader. So I'm like, she's getting into those like chapter books, stuff like that. So we're tight. So I'm reading all of those with her. So.
Oh, I love that.
So that's fun. Well, I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. So I'm excited to go take a look at all of those early childhood education videos that y'all have. And when I scroll through, when I hit that PBS channel, I'll stop and see if I see you and be like, oh, there's Sally. I see her. I think Orange County is definitely fortunate to have a teacher like you here. So thank you for taking time to share with me about a program the district does, but then also those fun things that you do in your classroom to ignite learning and create those lifelong learners for it. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you it's so awesome to hear from other OCPS teachers. I feel like it kind of connects everybody more, that way we're not all at our own schools, everybody's being connected. And so what you're doing by interviewing different people, that's just a cool opportunity to bring everyone together.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for watching, and check back next week for another episode of Mr. Parker Meets. Have a great day.
Bye.